Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Money. My guest today is Ehsan Saya. He's the managing director of Daraz Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Today we'll be talking about all things e-commerce, the challenges, the opportunities, and how did Daraz survive when so many other tech startups did not. Hi Ehsan, so good to have you on my show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So e-commerce. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that wasn't a thing in Pakistan, but Daraz is now one of the bigger players. How has the journey been for you?
Yeah, so we actually started in 2012, so quite a long time ago. We started as a traditional fashion retailer, hence the name Daraz. And we actually evolved, quite significantly since then. So in about 2016, we evolved into what we call a marketplace, or what is often known as a marketplace, which is that you don't just have your own products on that platform, but you actually enable and empower other sellers to place their products on your platform. And then in 2018, the Chinese company Alibaba acquired us. And since then, our business has grown quite significantly. We've had a lot of learning from them, both from a human resource perspective as well as from a technological perspective. And we've had a very interesting journey as we penetrate into a space that's still very nascent. E-commerce is still very young in Pakistan, and Daraz is, we are the biggest player in this, and with that comes a lot of opportunity, challenges, and the need to sort of make sure that your service levels are exceptional. You really pick up your game and make sure you're the best at it, so you can actually ensure that the industry grows, because the industry will grow if you grow, right? So there's a lot of there's with great power comes great responsibility.
Wow. I mean, to think that Daraz can have that big of power, I'm not sure I'm completely sold on that. There's a lot of competition coming in as well.
It seemed like it was a nice thing to say at that time.
Okay. But there seems to be a lot of competition coming in, especially international competition. I mean, initially I used to check Daraz, now there are other apps I checked as well. So, how does Daraz see that? What are your plans?
Look, I think competition is always healthy, right? Like I said, with great power comes great responsibility, but it actually forces you to get better as well. And I think we're very fortunate that we're a local company, and local companies invest locally. We stand by Pakistan. We're built by Pakistan, and our sellers are Pakistani. So we empower those sellers. Whereas some companies might not have the same mission and same vision of really empowering the local communities. We have over 100,000 sellers on our platform. Many women on our platform that sell, and through us there's thousands of households that are empowered. So I think there's obviously competition brings an opportunity for you to reassess the things that are working well and double down on them, and to look at the things that you're not doing so well on, and make sure you improve them. And I think it's healthy. But for us, we'll always be a local, Pakistan first company, and so for us it's that's what we stand by.
You might stand by, but for one thing, a lot of products being sold on the platform are not local. I mean, they're just resellers, right? Imports from China being sold here. That's what, and for shoppers at Daraz, I think a price point would be important. So if they have any other competition in which they can get even a 5 rupee or 10 rupee discount, and they're likely to shift. I know I have shifted.
Yeah.
So what's the strategy for that?
Yeah, look, I think in developing markets, people are price sensitive. And in order to make sure that you cater to that price sensitivity, it's super important that you work with your sellers to integrate the supply chain and make sure that they can pass on sustainable, cost-effective items to the consumer. What that means is that if today I give you a 95% discount and I can't do it tomorrow, you're gonna buy it today, you'll be gone tomorrow. What our focus is to make sure that we work with our sellers to really ensure that we can pass on the savings that they can get and give it onto the customer. So we as a platform really strive for making sure that we have the best prices and we have the assortment that you want. At the end of the day, if we have the assortment that you want, the best prices, and we offer a good experience in terms of your delivery, in terms of your return, if you're unhappy with your purchase, that ensures that a customer comes back and continues to purchase. So price, ensuring that price is competitive is definitely super important. And we try to do it in a sustainable way. We do it in a way that we work with the sellers to launch different campaigns. We saw, for example, that there's a big appetite for groceries and daily household purchases. And so we've launched campaigns around that, where we actually say that, look, give us the best price, and we'll make sure that your sales, are uplifted by an X amount as well. And so then sellers can also see the benefit there. If I reduce my profit margin a little bit, I can see a huge uplift in the sales that I can get. So it's very important to do, like I said, in a sustainable way. And yes, there will be some assortment that is available from outside of Pakistan, but you don't buy your groceries from outside of Pakistan. There's also having local companies. They will fulfill things faster, right? Making sure that experience is faster, and that customer experience is smoother, because the we companies like us will invest in customer services in the country, right? We have people in Karachi, in Lahore, making sure that if you're unhappy with your purchase, that they're catering to that, and it's not as ambiguous. But that experience has to always be paramount. It has to make sure We have to make sure as a company, and other players in e-commerce, that the experience on e-commerce is very smooth.
What are the top categories of sales in on Daraz? And there's a lot been happening, geopolitics, macroeconomically in the last 5 years. What have been the changes in purchasing patterns over the last 5 years?
Yeah. Um, Look, traditionally, e-commerce, at least in Pakistan, was more associated to just electronics. And that is
That wasn't very successful. I remember Rocket, and that was
Yeah.
not at all successful. There was Azmalo.
Yeah, it depends how you sort of perceive success. I mean, it's an easier category to get people to buy. It's high value items, so you can sell one thing and 1 lakh rupees ki sale ho sakti hai. So you can penetrate in terms of sales a lot faster, but it's a harder category perhaps in terms of profitability and sustainability. Um, but over time, consumers have become more comfortable buying other categories like groceries, like home decor, so lifestyle, general merchandise type things. Health and beauty is a very fast growing category. Fashion is a very fast growing category, and because in those you need the breadth of assortment. It's a much more inspirational based category. One phone, like the S25 is an S25 is an S25, but there are thousands of different types of kurtas and materials and styles, and everyone has a uniqueness to it. You may want to dress differently than I may want to. There's certain colors you like and designs I like. They'll be different. And so now consumers are a lot more open to being able to explore that and express themselves. With that purchase, that every purchase should be, I'm a unique individual. I want something that's unique, that says something about me. That when you see me wearing it, you remember it. And so e-commerce has really evolved since then, and with that, actually, given that the macroeconomic conditions have deteriorated for some time, inflation has been high until recently, but prices have overall increased. People are buying cheaper things, and people are more attracted to cheaper things. Um, and they really want that value for their money, and you see that across all categories, right? I mean, even
So if I were to ask what are the top 3 categories of Daraz, that if something happens to these categories, it will shake Daraz, what would be those?
Yeah, fortunately, there's no 3 categories that if they were to shake, something would happen to the Raz. Alhamdulillah, I think we've built a strong foundation, but the categories that we are really making sure that we double down on, invest in, and we see a strong future are health and beauty. Fashion is another one. So those are categories that we want to invest in, and actually the primary reason is we want to make sure that we're a platform that attracts the female customers as well.
Are your customers overwhelmingly female, or what's the ratio, right?
It's probably evenly split. It's also, to be honest, in Pakistan, it's hard to tell because you may have an account name it'll be a male name, and the card will be on a male's name, but it's actually going to a female. But women just make better shoppers as well, right? So it's very important for us as a business to make sure that it's important to attract women, and with that comes the challenges of making sure the assortment you get, the price points, the breadth of what you offer is catered to, you're able to cater to that.
Health and beauty and fashion, if these are your leading categories, aren't they very susceptible to macroeconomic challenges? Because this is the first thing you can cut off from your lifestyle if your livelihood is challenged.
Um, yes and no, because I think you will reduce your perhaps the average item value, but you're not going to entirely stop purchasing it. You're not going to stop leaving your house without makeup. You might reduce the sort of the amount of makeup that was done, or the different sorts of
But
stuff
I
you
might
buy.
stop buying new makeup.
You might, but or you might be a little bit more conservative in it. But there will be categories that you will still spend.
So the macroeconomic crisis has not affected your numbers at all.
No, sorry. I think I also said this pretty clearly, is that people are buying cheaper things, but people are still buying.
But
Right.
even buying
Yeah.
cheaper things, your top line, your volume, your
Yeah.
revenue, your
No, we continue to grow, but you have to keep in mind, look, e-commerce is still nascent in Pakistan. So even if the pie decreases, your share of the pie continues to increase, right? I mean, it's not like e-commerce in Pakistan is 35% of retail.
Did you share any growth numbers for that?
No, I can't unfortunately do that.
So not for e-commerce and not for Daraz in general.
Yeah.
Okay. So
But
one,
e-commerce generally is about, maybe 1.5-2% of retail. That's like the retail part of e-commerce.
if you look at the SBP payment systems of payment report, uh, the shift, there has been a very decided shift towards credit cards and debit cards, especially debit cards, ATMs. But overall, I think the trend in Pakistan is still very much cash economy based. We have those growth numbers, but that's because of low base factor. So has there been increase in online payments, or is still very much cash on delivery?
Yeah, it's still very much cash on delivery. Having said that, we work very closely with the banks, the schemes to educate people on the value of digital payment. Like if I order something on my card, when the product comes to my house, if I'm not home, I just say, leave it with XYZ, leave it with a neighbor, leave it just, and I'll get it. But if it's cash on delivery, that I'm not there, say kal aa jana. That kal aa jana is actually, it's easy to say, but there's a lot associated with kal aa jana. It goes back to the hubs. It gets resorted. There's a lot of costs associated to it, which eventually hurts the sellers. The consumers have to eventually incur burden of cost for it, as do the e-commerce players. So it really prevents e-commerce from growing as well. So it's very important actually for e-commerce to grow, that financial inclusion continues to improve. So like I said, we work with all of the major banks to not only incentivize customers, but to educate them that, look, hey, if you buy on your card, you're safe. Everything will be okay. We work with the schemes to make sure that, we provide seamless returns, that, if today you say, look, I'm not happy with this purchase and I bought it on my card, I want it returned. It should be seamless. It shouldn't take, in a country where, cost of capital is so high, if you buy something for, let's say, 2 lakh rupees, you can't be out of that money for 30, 45 days. So we need to make sure that we work with the schemes, the banks, to ensure, very quick and seamless returns.
Have you seen growth in that in the last 2 years, 5 years?
We have. In the prepayment share, we have.
Marginal growth or significant?
No, it's been marginal growth. Especially in terms of volume and value. It's not the right way to look at it as well, because value is really, you sell one phone or you sell, one kurti. They're, in terms of volume, they're one, but in value, there's a big difference. So value is really what represents consumers, and in terms of volume, it's been tougher to get consumers to start shifting. And a lot of that is also because of the lack of trust in e-commerce. So we have to make sure, again, that e-commerce, the trust in e-commerce is strong. So today, Daraz offers a 14-day return policy, almost no questions asked. In fact, some items we don't even ask you to return it back. But if you return it, we come to your doorstep, and most of the major cities will pick it up from your doorstep and ensure that the refund is processed. And then we work very, very closely with the sellers to make sure that if they've done something and they were in the wrong, they're held accountable. Right? So, they delivered a different product than what they promised. They have to be held accountable. And consumers have to be held accountable. So we make sure that through the technology that we have, through the data we have, that we try to improve that customer experience. Refunds and returns, if you're not happy with the product, they should be seamless. You should, like I said, have governance in place that holds sellers accountable, so their maturity can pick up and they can make sure they deliver on that promise to the consumer.
Can you say you have governance in place that's for seller mature? Even that would be the Raz's job, right? They will be the one training the sellers. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying, is it's very important for us to have that in place so that trust in e-commerce improves and increases.
So the Raz is one of the biggest success stories for the tech sector. There have been so many startups that came up with a huge boom and then they just died out, especially during the macroeconomic crisis. So what would you say, what makes a startup successful and what are the pitfalls waiting for it?
So first, look, I think you have to define success as well, because generally the way...
How about unit value profitability? Because I think that's a problem that a lot of startups.
But that's actually what that was a focus after money was no longer free.
Yeah.
But when money was free, your success was growth.
Yeah. And that did not work out. That's a formula that did not work out.
But at that time, money was free, so everyone there were growth. There was growth, and
There was growth for the people, but then the growth ended and there was no free money, and then they
right. So because the look, at the end of the day, startups and all businesses will be shaped by the what's happening in the capital markets. During COVID, when money was free and you were asked to grow, you could grow, right? You could spend the money and grow. And when money became not so free, and you had to sort of say, okay, now I used to have $10, now I have $1. I have 10 opportunities, now I have to choose one. And I'm going to choose the one that gives me the best profitability and sustainability. So I think in that turn, there's obviously going to be players who were not ready for that change in the way the capital markets were shaping. And those that were ensuring they were focusing on the unit economics, on the bottom line, are still there. And yes, they compromised growth at some point, but they made sure that they set up a strong foundation. And some, like you said, sort of just said, look, we'll grow at any cost. And when the tide turned, it also turned very quickly, right? It wasn't like money went from free to not free very, very quickly. So when that happened, it became very tight, right? The windows closed, and it became difficult for companies to be able to maneuver and just realign their strategy so quickly. The ones, like I said, that really had their thought that, okay, we need to build for sustainability, for profitability, for long term, they made it through the storm. And they're the ones that you still see, are there. They're continuing to prosper to some degree.
So the era of free money, it hasn't ended for Pakistan. Globally, it has ended, right? If you hear stories in the US about the Silicon Valley, it's not as free flowing as before. So if a new tech startup was to come in and I was the founder, what advice would you give?
I think make sure that you don't lose perspective on building a sustainable business. It sounds, it sounds sexy to say Series A, Series B, and all that, but at the end of the day, you have to be solving a problem, and someone has to be willing to pay for you to be able to solve that problem. It might be a great idea in your head, but if someone's not willing to pay for it, sorry, it's not like it's great. You can do it, but it's very difficult to make a business out of it. At the end of the day, you have to build a business. It has to have a path towards profitability. It doesn't have to be making money on day one, but there has to be a path that you can build sustainable business. And I think that a lot of the guys that built it with that mindset, when money became not free, they were able to weather the storm.
So if I were to sum it up, as long as the business is profitable, it will grow. And if it's not, once the free money is gone, the business will end. I think in a very nutshell, would that be it?
No.
No? Then?
Uh,
In a nutshell, the essence of it.
Shell. You will have your business strategy based on the capital markets. Sometimes you will invest in growth.
So how? So obviously, if you're in capital markets, there's this boom and then there's the bust. How do you survive the bust if you're not profitable?
Look, and that's when you have money, you have to make sure that
How do you survive when you don't have money? As in, you have the consumers, you have your market, but you do not have VC coming in, you don't have external investors coming in.
look, if you don't have external investments coming in, you have to be able to make money. 100%. But at the same time, the guys that were able to raise money because when you said, the success, when those guys that were successful were no longer.
See, when you talk about success, you see it from the eyes of a founder. When I talk about success, I see it from the eyes of a consumer and employee. So I think our definitions of success might be either.
Or that I said, how do you define success? Because I think
So let's just keep it on the eyes of an employee or a consumer, because most of our audience, most of the people here are employees and consumers and not founders.
yeah.
So in terms of success, that.
Look, I think in terms of success from an employee's perspective, think about how much experience those employees got at so many of those startups that may no longer be there.
But me no longer. There's so many horror stories of just,
I think I'm as a order person, maybe.
okay, and you are the CEO of a very big company, so you are allowed to be positive. Speaking as a person who's a lot of friends lost their jobs when yeah, maybe I think I'm defining success a bit differently. Because there's a time when, I'm a millennial and so many of my colleagues, friends were in FMCGs, backstage, and then there's this tech boom. Everybody wanted to go into tech. It was like, I'm going to forget my 10-15 year career in paints and I just want to find a tech job because wow. And then the tech boom ended and everybody was just so glad they held on to the jobs that they did. And the ones who had jumped ship will not glad. Because that's why my definition of success is so much different from yours. Which is why when I ask about success and profitability, it's about what did they do wrong and what did Daraz do right.
Yeah. Look, I think I would love to take credit for the things we did right and say, look,
How long
credit
have
did
you been to see Inspiration of August?
Yeah, I've been with Daraz since 2018. Prior to that, I was an investment banker in Canada. So about six
So 2008, you saw the pandemic, you saw the Russia-Ukraine war, you saw now you see it.
from my old age. Yeah.
So you've seen a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, look, I have, and I actually am still very hopeful. In fact, for when you said the technology boom has ended, I don't think the technology boom has come here yet, like it properly. Like I think there's so much. I mean, just look at the way, look, there are life changing technology that can change the direction of a nation. And today we're at the cusp of AI, and actually for a country like Pakistan, it really allows us to leapfrog. I'll give you an example of sellers on Daraz, right? For example, because they're not as mature, perhaps, or because they've been selling, they have a lot more relying on offline. If you go, let's say you go to Zenna Market and you as a seller want to get your product online, and he'll just take this bottle and he'll have it with the thousand things in the background, and he'll take a picture and he'll say, okay, ab kharido. And the customer will look at this and be like, yeah, मैं क्या खरीद रहा हूँ? They have no idea. But through AI, I can actually write the description for him. I can clear out the background. I can actually make this a product which was more reflective of the product is, and allow him to be able to sell that product. I can allow his maturity to leapfrog. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for us through technology. So
but that's predicated on that technology coming to Pakistan, a country that has internet shutdowns, a country that we cannot access X, even though the Prime Minister posts on X. So, I mean, I see no investments. I mean, we have Iran, Pakistan, 5Es and whatnot, but what are the investments that the government has made for AI? Maybe the companies are, but then again, there's a whole macroeconomic crisis going on. So, what I see in AI, what I fear in AI, and you are the optimist and I'm the cynic, is that I see other countries benefiting from AI and the race that we're already falling behind, they leap far ahead and we stay behind.
yeah,
So, how do we bring that investment in to the country on a company basis, if not a country basis? How do you convince investors to come to Pakistan now?
I'll tell you how I did it. Right. So um, when our management team, even from Alibaba, came to visit Pakistan, when initially they were meeting the management team of Pakistan, I made sure that they had the most time with people who are running the business in Pakistan, who are junior talent, mid-level talent, senior talent, and within 3 days they were left impressed, because the talent in Pakistan, and of course I say this because I'm also Pakistani, in my mind is exceptional. They are extremely hardworking, extremely smart, and very different from what you hear. Most people complain about. I have a lot of respect for the talent in Pakistan, and I think we're toe to toe with the best in the world. Of course, some of the we don't have all the infrastructure to be able to support us sometimes, but that's also what makes us a little bit more resilient to be able to get things
A
done.
lot of that talent must leave Pakistan.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's no doubt about that. There's a lot of talent that wants to leave,
Most of the talent wants to leave, I would say.
and it's not the end of the world. And now the reason it's not the end of the world is because if there's good things happening outside of Pakistan and good talent goes, a the perception of talent, Pakistani talent in the world goes up. And I can say this for myself, but I have so many colleagues who have gone and worked, and now they're working in Meta and in Google. They're working in great organizations all over Europe and the United States and Canada, and the one thing that constantly comes back is that because they're impressive talent, most of the companies they go to end up hiring more Pakistanis.
Absolutely. I would love to see a CEO standing, a Pakistani CEO standing behind the president during his inauguration, because it's Pakistani talent and I don't think we have enough of it going abroad, especially when our remittances are so high. But for companies in Pakistan, isn't it a challenge? You bring in somebody, you train them, 5 years later, they found a job in TikTok and they're out.
Yeah. It's like, what's the challenge for Harvard? Harvard has to decide if they're a university or a company. So I can decide that Daraz is a company that has to hold everyone, or I can decide that Daraz is going to be the best university in the country. I'm going to attract the best and smartest people.
Do you?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I mean,
So if somebody wants to apply to Daraz, how would they go about it?
you can go to our LinkedIn page.
And like, what kind of attributes do you look for in your?
We look for people who are extremely hungry, they're driven, and they're generally people who are analytical, and ones that want to have an impact. And I think we've been able to attract. I do think we've been able to attract the best talent, and I think we still attract the best talent. And that's also because we say, well, if you're the best talent in a few years, if you want to go, go. We make sure that when you come into the Raz, if you're after 1 year, you want to try something else, you're in accounting and you want to try operations, go for it, man. Like, try it. We make sure as an organization, we really build a place which is very welcoming for women. We were one of the first to have daycares. We have menstrual leaves for women. We provide transportation for women. In fact, I think my daughter was one of the first tenants of the daycare so that everyone would start using the daycare. So I think it's very important to build a culture and an organization that attracts the best talent, but is not one that sort of thrives only on holding that talent. Let them go. Build good systems, build good structures. And we've learned a lot of that from Alibaba, is to make sure that we have the systems in place, the governance, the structure, that if tomorrow someone goes, that the business continues. And that's why when you said, what 3 categories would blow up the company? No, it wouldn't. The company is, alhamdulillah, is a strong company. It's one that is built sustainably. It has strong foundations, and that's why it's been resilient for many years. It wasn't a fluke or an accident. It was by design. We designed it to be successful, right? So alhamdulillah, of course, you can design so much, and alhamdulillah, Allah has been very kind to help us. But I think if we constantly worried about just keeping the talent in Pakistan, then we would not be a place that attracts the best. We make sure that we attract the best, and then if they want to go, go. I mean, I've actually had reference calls for employees because they've gotten good job offers and they just need a reference to be able to get it. And I've been the first one to say, if it's a good job, that you should take it. So, and I think that's alhamdulillah how we've continued to be a place where year in and year out we get really good people. We get good people, and as a group, actually, the Raz group, when someone leaves in Singapore, we want to hire them in Pakistan, and we have presence in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Myanmar, and actually in all of these countries, we're really building smart talent.
So you keep mentioning Alibaba. Now, Pakistan's experience with China, if I were to look at CPEC on a government-to-government level, has not been very positive. But the way you talk about Alibaba makes you think that maybe Alibaba is happy with this acquisition. So is that the case? And with the whole restructuring that is happening in Alibaba, does that affect Daraz? Does that affect the decision-making in Pakistan? Are the decisions for Pakistan being made in Pakistan? Have there been layoffs? What has been the experience of Alibaba's reorg been for Daraz?
Yeah. So, again, we have to first understand the macroeconomic perspective as to why the reorg in Alibaba also happened, and of course that again comes down to the capital markets, right? So the way the money is flowing, the cost of capital, and we actually did do a round of layoffs about a year ago, and it was one that was sort of needed. It was needed for the business, and alhamdulillah, business has become much stronger.
What percentage of your workforce was laid off?
I don't remember at this time. That is the correct answer. But it was necessary for the business as well. And again, when money was free, it was that let's do 10 things out of 10. But when money was not free, you sort of say, look, I have to do the things that make the most amount of sense. So it was important for us to do that. It was important for us to centralize some of the functions and really get the best learning from not only Alibaba but from the experts in this. But to your question, we are still a Pakistani company. We still have every person in the office is still Pakistani. Decisions are being done in Pakistan. In fact, a lot of Pakistanis are in the senior management for the entire group, right? So again, a testament to the talent that we have here. But I think this this reorg has really allowed us to make sure that we build a sustainable business. We invest in the right areas. That foundation that I keep talking about is built, very, very strong. And so that Daraz is there for generations to come. And that actually is, I think, for me, that would be the most fulfilling thing. is today Daraz is a platform that empowers and uplifts communities through the power of commerce. I want that platform to be there 100 years from now, and businesses, if there's a seller who started his business or her business on Daraz, I want her to be able to pass it on to her kids. That's really how I measure our success, is that if we are able to build a business that empowers local communities and they are able to build generational wealth and pass it on to their kids, and you know, that's power. And that's actually where I think, is it'll be the most fulfilling. That's where I think the people that come and they work at the Razal will give them most fulfillment.
Fair enough. But what is your footprint outside KLI, Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad? Because if that is your vision, then that vision has to be outside the metro areas, the urban areas. So what's the footprint like for that?
Yeah, so about 35% of our sellers are outside of Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad. Those areas have also been growing very rapidly. So we have a platform called Daraz Express, which is our logistics platform. So it's in about 20 some odd cities, and KLI is only 3 cities, right? So we actually have built logistics and logistics infrastructure to cater to sellers outside of Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad. 25% of our sellers actually are females. So there's a big opportunity to be able to, not only for those sellers to be able to access consumers, but also for consumers to be able to access things outside of Karachi and Lahore and Islamabad.
And do you see a growth outside of KLI towards e-commerce?
Yes, absolutely. There's that's also because of the inaccessibility of some of that assortment and where they live, right? Where you can go on Daraz and order it, and it doesn't matter where it is in the country, you can get it in Chichalatni if you want.
So earlier we talked about streamlining operations. Earlier, Daraz had streaming, PSL and all that, and I think even currently a PSL is being streamed. But then we have Tamasha, and we have a lot more platforms right now who are streaming cricket. So is that an arm that you intend to work on, or is that something you tend to phase out? Or
Yeah, I think we like to be the first. We like to disrupt spaces. So I think we were actually the first e-commerce company, not only in Pakistan, in the world, that showed sports for free. And since then, all the big companies have done it. And I think part of that was that let's there's an opportunity to be able to help consumers and be able to get to them. How can we do it? And over time, like you said, others have entered, and it's kind of like, okay, well, we can also do it, and we will do it if it makes sense for our consumers, but it's not something we have to do. It's that's why we're streaming PSL, and we've had a lot of our consumers actually are very happy that we're back into streaming sports and cricket, and our intention is over the short, medium, and long term, we will continue to do that, where it makes most sense for our consumers.
a basic question: what are the challenges and opportunities you see in the next 5 years?
Look, I think the biggest challenge, one is the trust in e-commerce. And like I said, we're trying to do a lot to navigate that. And again, all the challenges actually are opportunities too. So the second challenge is the financial inclusion. And I think that's a huge opportunity. Right? You have so many millions of people that don't have access to forget debt. They don't have access to be able to pay digitally, right? So once you have that, e-commerce can really start to thrive because a lot of the cost savings can be passed on to the consumers as well. And finally, the third is logistics. Logistics continues to still be a challenge because of sort of the road infrastructure, the ability to get into all parts of Pakistan. So we've been investing a lot in that. In fact, Daraz has the smartest distribution center outside of in South Asia, outside of India, in Karachi and Lahore. Where we can sort through a few million packages and have maybe the same number of people we have in the studio, in that distribution center. So
What's the process for that?
for us, it's
For
literally,
people who are not,
yeah,
can't see the number of people, they're just like 5, 6 people in the studio.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the way it would essentially, if I could describe it very easily, it would be a bag full of items. Packages comes in, it gets dropped off to a conveyor belt. That conveyor belt weighs it, sorts it by not only the hub, it can sort by which street or area of that hub it needs to go to within just a few hours, and it can do that for millions of packages through just complete automation, and without having. And we used to actually, a few years ago, we used to have thousands of people on 1111 just going through and saying, "Acha, this needs to go Gujranwala. Acha, Gujranwala wala dabba kahan hai? Acha, Gujranwala wala dabbe mein."
That is what I assume is happening.
That's not what's happening. But now, instead of that, well, it used to happen. in all fairness. And in fact, there was an 11/11 where my chief operating officer and I were the people going and say, "Good job." So, then we said we have to have a more automated way. And alhamdulillah, today we have one of the most, technologically advanced distribution centers, like I said, in South Asia.
When I hear stories of Amazon and China about dark warehouses where everything is being done with robots, and then the conversation on 5G and Starlink comes in because you need really strong internet for that, which with internet shutdown sometimes you don't even have. So, so if I make it a two-part question, one, what do you see the future of that in Pakistan? Bringing robots to sort all those packages for 1111, and what is the sustainability of that future given the internet infrastructure in Pakistan? I mean, did internet disruptions affect the RAS operation? I'm assuming they should have.
They they didn't disrupt our business as much as they disrupted things like, food delivery or ride hailing, because those are ones that you need essentially immediately. So people were still able to, navigate till they got home and then be able to purchase the things that they wanted. It made our operations a little bit more challenging, right? Where our riders or our heroes would have digital access to being able to go and deliver something, they had to be a little bit more manual. But I think it is very important, like you said, to have that internet infrastructure be stable, because it's not about it being off for a day. It's about having the uncertainty that it can get taken off. And that uncertainty creates doubt in companies and in investors. So it's very important that as a country we balance how we do this, and we do this in a way that actually it allows for more investment to come to Pakistan, allows for our economy to be strong.
So on one hand, I'm like very impressed that we have that kind of data center that you can the fulfillment center, whatever you call it, in which millions of packages can be sorted through conveyor belts. On the other hand, I'm thinking of all those people who had jobs who no longer have jobs. So I mean, we are a very labor intensive
They don't
country.
know that's up. They have different jobs. I mean, in that case, you should
If they are like,
comp yourself. You should have, like then you would never automate anything. You shouldn't do anything on a laptop.
but then that is the so when
We need to upskill, and we need to ensure that as a company, it's not like all those people disappeared. We still have warehousing. We have people doing deliveries. We have people in our offices who have joined. Actually, some people have joined in customer care operations, and now they're actually in head office managing sellers.
how but what was the percentage of people who lost their jobs who found another job within their hours?
I don't.
You wouldn't know. Obviously, you wouldn't know. But see, that's the debate for a country like Pakistan. Not for the specific to Daraz, but the more intensity we go towards tech, the fewer jobs you have because we don't have a very educated workforce.
But it's about. I'll give you an example of our sellers. I have met sellers. In fact, I met one time. I met a seller who had just 70,000 rupees. In fact, he didn't even have the 70,000. He was a food panda rider, and all he had to his name was his bike. And he sold his bike, got 70,000 rupees, invested that in being able to get his platform up and running. Today, we for free educate 5,000 sellers on our platform.
And when you talk about educate about how to sell on the
How
raw,
to sell on the RAS, how to write a description, how to take a picture. When a customer asks a question, how do you respond in a nice way? What do you do when you deliver the package? How do you follow up after that? How do you ensure that seamless customer experience? But to say that, well, this person should have just been doing that forever because he would have never done that, is to me is very unfortunate. As yes, but I think you have to push towards automation. You have to push towards improving the skill of people, but you have to invest in that. And as a company, we want to invest in that. We want to make sure that people today can start as as a small job as you have and be able to build up. And our sellers do the same thing. I've met sellers that have started with absolutely nothing, and they've bought houses off the earnings of built on their house. And you would say, this person is not educated. But this is the education that we need to focus on, the technical education, the ability to be able to change their lives is different in a digital economy too. Someone cannot necessarily be, even a metric pass and be able to go on Daraz and be able to work hard, do it in an honest way, make sure they deliver an exceptional customer experience, have strong pricing for the products, has an understanding, is a smart businessman or woman, and can do well. And I think it's very cool.
it's very cool. But giving as one of the tech CEO leaders of the country, if I were to ask you the question, with the masses of unemployed, how much of the responsibility is on the private sector and how much of the responsibility is on the government? Because it's just this much one company can do. It
Yeah,
could be a
absolutely. Look,
sector
I mean,
wide. like what would be the mechanics? Because the people who are not educated might be able to do better at the fulfillment centers. They might not be able to have that access to finance, or even so whose responsibility is it overall for the masses unemployed? Because if there is mass unemployment in Pakistan, it affects businesses, consumers, and the government.
Absolutely. Look, I think it is definitely the responsibility of the state to be able to take the ownership of educating people and uplifting their lives and making sure that they provide the infrastructure for them to be able to do that. It is also the responsibility of private organizations to be able to make sure that they build their businesses off of the talent here as well. Of majority of the the specific question you asked on the education is, of course, is the ownership of the state, and that is what
No,
the
but we
state.
have educated unemployment as well.
Yeah. And that's where I think, as we see Pakistani companies continue to grow and do well, then hopefully we are able to find more, avenues to be able to attract that talent. And that's why I said, if people are leaving Pakistan, it's okay. There's a lot of good talent in Pakistan that can continue to serve a lot of the good companies that are here.
So, last question. The budget is around the corner. What can the government do to actually empower the tech sector rather than just say that they want to boost exports of services?
Yeah. So I'll maybe speak specifically to e-commerce. So there's actually in e-commerce there's a withholding tax that just applies on e-commerce sellers. Which actually, to if you want e-commerce to grow, the pricing that you see on Daraz has to be the same as you would find in Zena Market or the mall. So you know that, okay, I'll find the cheapest product possible. In order for that to happen, our sellers have to have the same cost structure. If they're disincentivized on e-commerce versus offline, they will always prefer being offline or having better cost structure offline. So one of the things that we would like is that the withholding tax that applies to e-commerce is there should be a similar cost structure offline and online. And online actually allows for more over the long term inclusion of for the tax net too, because you're able to understand and get a lot of the information in a digital way, so you know who's selling what and how much.
Of course, I mean, the government would like to be digitized. Sellers would like to be not, because then they have to pay taxes. So again, uh, for e-commerce to go, people have to be more accepting to the fact that they will be within the tax net. And how do you counter that? Because the taxes are so extreme that anybody who can avoid taxes will avoid taxes. So in that economy where there's a disincentive to be online, there's a disincentive to e-commerce. How do you grow the sector?
I think the way you grow this sector is, like I said, there's this same pressure of taxation will apply on offline as well.
So basically, decrease taxes, which is what we all want.
No, not necessarily increase taxes, is broadening the tax net. So I think that's what, right? I hope that's what you want as well, like for everyone to be able to.
We are the most tax class. I would, yeah, yeah.
I think as that happens, hopefully it creates that equitable state where people can evolve and jump more into e-commerce.
I truly have huge hopes for the upcoming budget that the tax net will be broadened and not deepened for a change. I thank you so much for coming to the show, Ehsan. It is a very, very illuminating discussion.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.